Check, check. Check, check, check. Can you all hear me okay? All right. It is now 6:07. We're running 7 minutes behind, so I want to be as respectful as I possibly can to the panelists' time, to your time. So let's get started. My name is Manny Pelaez. I am a city councilman for District 8. The day after the El Paso shootings and the Dayton shootings, my staff and I, we sat down and we said, this is a time for a conversation, a difficult conversation. That conversation is one that we've been seeing play out throughout the entire United States, right? We've been seeing it play out on the news. We see experts get on camera and tell everybody, this is what you should believe, this is what you should believe. We get folks yelling at each other on the radio, right? There's plenty of articles, and yet nobody ever talks to you and asks you to talk back. This is an interactive dialogue that we're going to be doing today. However, there's some housekeeping matters that I want to take up real quick. Housekeeping matter number one. Anybody who needs to use the restroom, out these doors to the left, okay? Housekeeping matter number two. Please put your phones on silent, but keep them on. We are going to use our phones today, okay? Each one of you received a little slip of paper today. If you haven't, you should have. A little slip of paper that looks like this. If you have not received this little slip of paper, please raise your hand and we'll make sure to get one to you. Here's yours, okay? And this gentleman right here needs one as well. You will need your phones today to be able to use this feature where we're going to be interactive, okay? There's a gentleman back there whose hands was up as well. The third rule, when someone is talking on the mic, I need you guys to listen, okay? It's really hard to sit through this conversation because you just want to pop up and you want to express yourself, and you're going to hear things today with which you disagree. Things that you might not like. Things that make you mad, okay? Things that just fundamentally go against the things that you believe, and that is why we're calling it a difficult conversation. Okay? Here's what we don't want this to become. We don't want it to become a screaming match. We don't want it to become, a place where we exchange insults, right? We don't want this to become a place where we just do speeches, right, and aren't listening. I'm going to challenge you guys today to be the opposite of what we're seeing play out on television, right, and on the radio, and, people calling each other names. I'm going to challenge you guys to be neighbors today, okay? And I know that you guys won't let us down. More housekeeping rules, or matters. Right back there's a nice lady flashing a white sign with an arrow on it. She is standing next to a blue box. That blue box is where you insert your parking tickets to get them validated, okay? Remember, if you don't validate your parking ticket, they're going to charge you out front. And so I don't want you guys to have to pay for parking for having shown up today. Another issue that has come up is that, as you can see, there's a lot of law enforcement here, right? So if you haven't paid your speeding tickets, now would be a good time. No. Please remember that we've got law enforcement here and we've got first responders outside. This is probably the safest building, the safest room in all of San Antonio right now because they're here. So if you don't mind, can we thank them, for their service? Thank you. Also, my friend, Mayor Ron Nierenberg, just showed up. Hey, Mayor. If y'all don't remember, as soon as the El Paso shootings and the Dayton shootings, were announced on the news and we were seeing that horror story play out, the mayor called all of City Council together to declare that this is unacceptable, that this is not the way things are supposed to be, and to remind folks that San Antonio takes care of not just its own, but that we take care of those that we love who are in other cities as well. And the mayor got to speak with the mayor of El Paso, reached out and offered a whole bunch of mutual aid. And then there's going to be a moment today during our presentation, if the mayor is still here, where we might ask him a couple of questions and he might be able to, and we're going to put him on the spot, okay? So Mayor, I'm warning you, you might get put on the spot and in the next 20 minutes. Got it. Okay, folks, my name is Manny Pelaez. let's dive in and have a difficult conversation, okay? So, first of all, what is a mass shooting? Before anybody screams it out and starts answering the question, how many of you were here for the first town hall? Okay, so for those of you that were already here for the first town hall, no cheating, okay? We're going to let somebody else answer the question. Who here knows what a mass shooting is, and how would you define it? Yeah, go ahead.
I recently saw your last video. I would also like to mention I recently just came to jail for simply open carrying a pellet rifle that's not considered a firearm, and I would like to invite you to my court hearing on the 3rd of September.
Okay, so we heard that when 4 or more people are killed, how many of you think that that should be the definition of a mass shooting? How many of you disagree with that definition? Okay, why do you disagree with that definition? Okay. More than 4 people. Great. You disagree with the 4 or more definition of a mass shooting. Tell me why. Okay. Right. So here's the thing, right? I think it's important, and anybody here who disagrees, raise your hand and we can talk about it. Do we all agree that it is important at the very least for all of us to be on the same page as to what a mass shooting is? Do we agree? Okay. Do we all agree that it's important for purposes of U.S. statistics and global statistics, just to understand where we rank in the world, right? For us to be able to have an agreed-upon definition of what a mass shooting is, so we can understand the problem a little better, right? And you collect data around that definition. Do we agree on that? You disagree or you agree? All right, good job. You and I are syncing. What's your name? John, I'm going to pick on you today, okay? All right, thanks for being a good sport. So let's look at the definition that all experts, including law enforcement, right, use to identify and work with statistics around around this concept of mass shootings. And here it is. People use the Gun Violence Archive's definition, which is 4 or more shot or killed in a single event at the same general time and location, not including the shooter, right? And we don't parse the definition to remove any subcategory, and we don't exclude or differentiate victims based on the circumstances in which they were shot. Let's refine that even simpler. 4 or more people shot and or killed, period. Okay? That's the definition that everybody operates on. Now, I posted this definition online, and boy, it elicited some anger from folks. Folks were saying, look, that would include a drive-by shooting, you know, in my neighborhood where 4 people were killed. That's not what I would consider to be a mass shooting, right? I would consider a mass shooting to be something different. And anger, right, is elicited when people disagree with this. Some of you may disagree with this, but for the purposes of today, let's go with this definition, okay? Because we need to go with something, and this is the generally accepted one. Noah? So, the question is it worse in the United States, right? Because we keep hearing over and over again in the news, it's worse here than anywhere else. It's worse here than anywhere else, right? Gun violence, this is the most dangerous country where it comes to gun violence. Let's look at a list. This has actually been studied, and it turns out that it's not. When it comes to deaths by gun violence, right, and we exclude deaths as a result of military campaigns, right, and we exclude, gosh, what was the other one? The accidental discharges, right, things like that. This is where we rank. Deaths by gun violence, we actually rank number 10 in the world, okay? However, if you look at that list, of the top 9 and the others, we're looking at Honduras, El Salvador, Swaziland, Guatemala, Jamaica, Brazil, Colombia, and Panama. So at least we're safer than those. It's nothing to brag about, right? That's kind of a bad list to be on, even if you're number 10. And then the ones where it's actually, where it's safer than here include Paraguay, Barbados, Costa Rica, Peru, South Africa, Philippines, right? Places that are quite often on the news for having rampant crime, organized and unorganized, where you take your life in your hands just by walking down the streets. And so, is it more dangerous in the United States than anywhere else? No, but we're high on that list, okay? However, let's just look at mass shootings using the definition that we gave you, right, earlier, and that is a little different. It turns out that for mass shootings, we are number 1. In fact, if you take all the mass shootings in Europe, Africa, Latin America, and Australia, and combine them together, we still are number 1. We are exceptional in that regard, right? So, here's another thing I want you guys to think about. We are also number 1 when it comes to sales of this bag. This is the bulletproof bag. In the past month, sales of the bulletproof bag have gone up 300% in the United States. If you are the company that sells bulletproof bags, you're killing it right now. You're making a lot of money. That bag on the left and in the middle, that top part separates out and it turns into a bulletproof vest, right? It's got armor plating on the inside. The one on the right is called the Junior Pack. It is for children in preschool ages who are 46 inches or shorter. The price of a backpack that does this is somewhere between $200 and $400, right? And it's really a very difficult backpack to sell in other countries. It's very popular here. Next slide. This is how they test the backpack. And experts have agreed that this backpack in El Paso, in Dayton, and in Sutherland Springs would have accomplished absolutely nothing because the bullet of choice was this. This is a green tip American Eagle Federal ammunition, right? And a green tip is cheaper at Academy and at Walmart than a non-green tip. And green tip, by the way, is a armor-piercing bullet. Is that about right, Chief? It is cheaper to buy a bullet, and by the way, I buy them to go plinking, and they'll pierce through about 3/4 of an inch of steel in the gun that I own, right? And I've taken them out. A green tip is cheaper, and it shoots through steel, okay? And I know we're going to disagree today, but I'll be happy to show you pictures of the results of the gun that I shot with this ammo. The reality is it's very, very easy to get, and those would have pierced any of the backpacks that I gave you, okay, that I showed you. Next slide. So the question is are we ready? And this is where I'm going to stop and ask the mayor. Mayor, is San Antonio ready for something like this?
Well, thank you, Councilman, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I hope our numbers increase as we have the next town hall and we have more dialogue in the community. Are we ready for an event that would be so unthinkable that no community has ever wanted to endure it, but too many have? I would say, in my opinion, as a parent, as a neighbor, and as a mayor, emotionally, you can never be ready for a moment like this. And, you know, if you talk to the folks who have endured it through first response, I think you would hear a level of devastation personally that no one, I think, can ever prepare adequately for. But what I would tell you from a safety and security standpoint, the individuals who you'll be hearing from now will talk with you about the best available procedures, equipment, and technology that's available to keep a community ready and safe in the event that we now say is no longer a matter of if, but when, and that you have a commitment from the councilman, myself, the folks that represent these jurisdictions to make sure that we do everything it takes, up to and including changing the way we treat guns in our society. And I don't want to take too much more time because I know these folks have good things to share, but I will tell you there is a deep commitment from myself and my colleagues to overturn every stone, open every book, examine every code that we can to make sure that guns and other dangerous weapons don't fall into the hands of people who mean to do harm to our community with them. And that may not be a popular thing to say in politics in 2019, especially in certain locations. But that's why you elected us, is to make the difference to keep our community safe. And so long as I'm here, that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Mayor, one other question.
Sure.
I own a gun. I'm actually a licensed to carry. I carry. I also own a rifle. I like to go hunting, and sometimes I'm lucky enough, a friend of mine let me go to the ranch and shoot at things. One of my rifles shoots at 5.56 rounds. Your intention, there's a lot of people who are going to listen to what you just said, who read the newspaper. Your intention, do you think that city council is intent on keeping?
Well, so city council, and actually no jurisdiction, has the authority, and most don't have the desire, including myself, to take guns out of the hands of lawful gun owners that use them responsibly. So hopefully that will disavow any notion to the contrary. Yeah.
Folks, Mayor Nierenberg. Thanks, Mayor. So, are we ready? Check out this. These are pictures that play out on TV way too often, and I think we've become so accustomed to them. But I picked these 5 pictures because they're special. They're very, very special. And today I'm going to ask Chief Hood, or actually Danielle is going to ask Chief Hood to tell us, and maybe we'll go back to this slide, Danielle, when you ask Chief Hood your question, about why that picture on the right, the one that has police officers around firefighters, is so important. And what we've done this budget and last budget, and what Chief has done with SAPD to make that picture a reality in San Antonio in the event of a very ugly event. We're going to touch on that picture. But I want you to look at the one on the top in the middle. Who is that? You remember this guy? Dallas, that's right. This is the shooter in Dallas, right? And on the top left, that's the kind of equipment, right, that SWAT teams and police forces use, right? This is something becoming quite common and an expensive purchase, but a necessary one. Today we're going to ask Chief McManus to talk to us a little bit about that kind of equipment and what it is that his SWAT team does. Okay, Chief? And then lastly, the bottom left one. Those are not SAPD. This is here in San Antonio. Those are not sheriff. The bottom left is Judson ISD police officers who were certified in SWAT to be able to respond to active shooter situations. That's happening in our schools, okay? And I have a feeling that all the other school districts are following suit because this is best practices now. So, let me introduce you to my friend Danielle Hargrove. Danielle Hargrove is an old friend of mine. She's an attorney, but she's a mediator, and she works with the city of San Antonio on helping us break through to solutions of very difficult problems. And right now, Danielle is helping the city work on the very difficult problem and this debate about paid sick leave and wages. Danielle has helped us break through very difficult problems involving transportation, taxi services, and taxi licenses. And Danielle and I have worked many times on very complex, interesting cases. I picked Danielle because she's a veteran. She's very, very serious. She's really smart, and she knows how to control a room and make sure to cut through the BS and ask very incisive questions. My friend right here is Chief Lewis. Chief Lewis is the chief of police at UTSA. You've been there since August of 2016. He oversees public safety division at UTSA, and that includes the police department, all emergency management, environmental health, safety, and risk management. He joined UTSA after serving as chief of police of the East Carolina University Police Department in 2014. Right? All right. My other friend at the end of the table is Javier Salazar. Javier heads up, Sheriff Salazar heads up an organization with a $150 million budget. He commands 1,500 deputies and also 300 civilians. Aside from being the chief law enforcement officer for the county of Bexar, which means that he enforces any and all laws, state laws, right? And so anywhere within the county. He also operates our jails. And the sheriff is also very, very helpful in regards to domestic violence, and he's taken that on as well for the county. And thank you, Sheriff, for being here. Chief McManus, who you all know and you see too often on television when tragedies play out, is my friend as well. Chief McManus has been our police chief since March of 2006, and he oversees a department of more than 2,400 officers and 800 civilians. He has over 40 years of experience in law enforcement, and he previously served as the chief of police in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and, get this, he was the chief of police in Dayton, Ohio. Today, the chief is going to talk to us a little bit about something he did in Dayton, Ohio many years ago that resulted in the past 2 months in people not getting killed. That could have been a much worse tragedy than it was, but for Chief McManus, it wasn't. And then our friend Charles Hood, Chief Hood, he is the fire chief for San Antonio, and he's been with us since 2007, and he leads one of the largest fire departments in the nation. He commands approximately 1,800 personnel, has a budget of over $292 million. Oh, sorry, 330. And he's ultimately responsible for providing fire, emergency medical, special operations, and emergency management and fire prevention to over 1.4 million citizens. His department is responsible for over 310,000 unit responses. Is that about right, Chief? That's a lot of responses. Folks, please help me welcome Danielle and your panelists, and let's start a difficult conversation.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Danielle Hargrove, and I'm pleased to be here to assist in indeed what is a difficult conversation. I'd like to start out, you took my thunder. I had all my bio stuff going on here, Manny, but I'd like to start off and just ask each of our panelists where you were when you heard about El Paso, and how did it make you feel, and what did you think? And I'll start with you here first, Chief Rose.
When I heard about the El Paso shooting, I was actually at home, and the way it makes you feel at some point is helpless, because you want to be able to help those people. You want to pray for that community. One of the things that I thought about as soon as I see that is you want to hug your family a little tighter, and you certainly want to look at your own plan to see if you are prepared for an incident of that nature. And so you start having those sleepless nights, as any chief would have, any sheriff would have. And so I think you look at your plan, you reevaluate your plan, and you try to think of ways to improve your plan, because you want to be prepared as you can be for an incident such as that. So I think that was the way I feel. That was the way I felt when I heard about that shooting.
I was sitting in Dallas at a family reunion, and my phone went off, and it was a request for a mobile morgue to go to El Paso. And so I kind of heard about it before it hit the news wave. And the chief of El Paso is a friend of mine. The chief of Houston used to be the chief of El Paso, and he's a close friend of mine. So I immediately thought that there were probably people that they both knew that were in that Walmart. And as it turns out, there were. There were 3 firefighters, families that were in that store that were injured. There was a public works employee from the city of El Paso that was killed. And so my thoughts went right away to the people. And then again, what are we going to do?
Hi, everybody. I was at home. I remember I was sitting in my kitchen. I was actually talking with the city manager about that shooting. And after we were done talking about it, my next conversation was with SAC Chris Combs. SAC is Special Agent in Charge of the FBI, Chris Combs, to talk about the shooting and if they were aware of any possible connections between or not connections, but if there was anything else going on anywhere in the country relating to that incident. And the following day, I think it was Sunday, the following day I was on the phone with representatives in law enforcement from Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, among others, talking about both shootings and the possibility of any connections. And at the end of that conversation, it was concluded that there was no link between Dayton, El Paso, and there was nothing else brewing anywhere else in the country.
Thank you, Chief. We're going to want to come back and talk a little bit about your experiences with Dayton, as Councilman Pelaez mentioned. Sheriff Salazar?
Yes, ma'am. That day I was actually at a church event with my family and got the call. Immediately got on the phone with my command staff and put them on alert to let them know that this had occurred, and let them know to be on the lookout for either copycats here locally or the fact that may have been a distraction for something else happening here. So we started kind of tightening things down here. But I also got on the phone by text message with Sheriff Richard Wiles, the El Paso County Sheriff, whom I've never met personally. We had to dig around and get his phone number, but I was able to send him a text message and offer up whatever help he might need. It turns out he didn't take us up on it, but I put my public information officer in touch with his public information officer, because we knew one of the things they were going to need help with, whether they knew it or not, was the onslaught of national media that they were going to be getting. And so I told my public information officer, Johnny Garcia, just be ready to roll. If they need you, just go. We'll fill out paperwork later. But that's typically what we're ready to do, is respond to any other county in the state of Texas. Should that sheriff need anything, that's certainly what we will do. And I can certainly talk about another instance where that came into play here in a little while.
Thank you very much. So as I thought about this, when I was asked to moderate it, the first question that came to my mind is can a city or a government or anybody actually prepare for something like this? Because typically you're responding to it. You don't know where they're going to be. You don't know anything so the question that begs the question is, can a city do it? Now, I understand, Chief Hood, that your agency has done a lot to try to prepare for a mass shooting, and I think Councilman Pelaez has kind of hinted at that. Can you tell us a little bit about what the department's done in that regard?
Sure. Good evening again, and thank you for being here. I'm going to give you an acronym, and it's called ASHER, and it's Active Shooter Hostile Event Response. Active Shooter Hostile Event Response. And unfortunately, in this climate, there is a best practice for large-scale fire departments to respond to events such as this. And so our department has been working with all of these gentlemen up here in their agencies and partners throughout the region to be able to respond to something like this. We have unfortunately had to look at attacks in Paris, Long Beach. We have actually sent folks to Pulse nightclub. I had an opportunity to go to Pulse nightclub about a month after and walk it with the fire chief. And we've had an opportunity to learn. We've invested about $750,000 in ballistic gear for our firefighters. So every single day, 35 of my fire trucks have ballistic gear on them. We have become a department that gives blood in the field. First department in the country. So we are able to provide battlefield medicine in the streets of San Antonio. And we have worked with these agencies and many others, including Region 20, every police department in this region, every sheriff's department, the sheriff's department, every law enforcement, every school district. We have had them to our training. Several of them have participated in our live training. So what this means is if we get a situation like the Pulse nightclub, and there was lack of communication between fire and law enforcement, there was no coordination to try to extricate or remove any of those victims, we never want that to happen in this city. And with the size of rounds that are being used, you could basically get hit in your knee, your ankle, your elbow, and you could bleed to death. We don't want that legacy of where we had people dying of gunshot wounds to the elbow and we could not go in and get them out. So what we are prepared to do under force protection from whichever law enforcement agency is available, we are going to go in and remove, treat, and transport as many people as we can, wherever that is. And so, again, if it's in the county, San Antonio Fire Department is going to go and help. We are the largest provider of EMS in this region, so we will go. The beauty of blood was given 1 million times between Vietnam and the recent wars. Why can't it be done in the streets? We do that on a daily basis, so we could, if we would have that capability, drop a pallet of blood in Sutherland Springs. So we have done so many things to prepare. I could sit here and talk to you for an hour. The gentlemen in the back that are working, they're all firefighters. A couple of them work in fusion. We could talk about fusion. We could talk about all of the things that we do to leverage information from different agencies, whether it's threat assessments at high schools, or working with our partners at USAA and Valero. So as far as a fire department, as far as a region, we continue to learn from these incidents. We continue to train on active shooter and hazardous events responses and rescue task force training, just like we practice for fires. That has become the new reality for this organization. And it is not a question of if it's going to happen, it's only a question of the magnitude and how we respond. So again, I appreciate all of you being here. We got some folks in the back that are subject matter experts. We'll be happy to talk to you a little bit more, but I do not want to dominate this, but be very confident that your fire department is prepared for an event like this. The emotional side, you can never prepare, but you can plan, you can spend funds, and you can have processes that include a lot of different agencies to respond to something like this. So thank you.
You know, I imagine this conversation is difficult because there are those who are interested in trying to avoid it, prevent it completely, dealing with the issue of guns in general and access and the things that Councilman Pillai has already addressed. So Chief Hood there just sort of addressed sort of what you do if that unthinkable event happens. So I imagine we're going to have some conversations, some discussion here a little bit about what do we do to try to prevent these kinds of things. Right now we're focusing on what our agencies are currently doing when they have to respond to these types of events. And it kind of blows my mind. I'm looking at the picture that Councilman Pillai's put up where we had, looks like police department encircling the fire department folks. I mean, I'm a veteran. Did I do that or did someone else do that? And I'm a veteran. I'm prior military, and I mean, this brings back that type of preparation for me. And I don't know if it strikes you in the same way, but the language that we're using, we're talking battlefield medicine, we're talking about, ballistic gear, we're talking about a mindset that we really would have to wrap our mind around, that's where we are, and that's where that's where we are. And is that where we want to go? Is there any way to retract from that? Is there any ability to do that? So what about the other agencies? I actually went online and I saw that UTSA has a video that they have for the students to look at with regard to that. I don't know if that's your department or if that's, but that was very interesting. I called my daughter immediately. She's a senior in college, and I said, "Do they have this at your school?" She said, "I don't think I've seen that," but she quickly told me about the backpacks. So, you know, it's frightening as a parent. It's very interesting, but please tell us what they're doing at UTSA.
I think one of the things that Chief Hood and I talked prior to coming up here, I think this is a subject that keeps all of us awake at night. The one thing that I wanted to tell you about my bio prior to getting into university law enforcement, I was a New Jersey State Trooper for 26 years. So I have a different perspective on university policing. And I think we learned from each incident. I can remember years ago when Columbine occurred, and tactically, people waited until the SWAT team came. Well, we had to change tactics because that wasn't a sound tactic. And now we go in and we try to neutralize that threat. So we practice our tactics, we participate in active shooter drills, and I'm a believer in you play the way you practice. So if you practice and you play well, you're going to play well. And I believe in that. We've incorporated training with our officers, and years ago you wouldn't have thought that a university police department would have to train for active shooters, but we do. We just had a large-scale exercise last year where we had SAFD there, we had the PD there, we had the sheriff there, the FBI. And when I talk about that different perspective, I bring that different perspective because I partner with all of these agencies, the FBI and everyone else. And so we formed those better partnerships. We don't have those, what I used to call informational silos where we don't share information. Now we've done a better job at sharing information and sharing resources. The education of our university community and the public is crucial in preventing some of these incidents. We've actually, there's a new term that's pretty rare now and pretty new. It's called leakage. Well, anytime we have one of these shootings, a lot of times there's leakage. These people post things on social media, they give out information to people. So we've gotten better at preventing them, and so our preparation goes along with preventing some of these things. The other thing that we do is every threat is taken seriously. You cannot actually not take a threat seriously, and that's hugely important, especially at the university. The one thing that I do, I had two daughters who went to Hampton University in Virginia, and as a police chief, you really don't sleep a lot at night. I'm pretty sure Chief McManus can tell you that, Sheriff Salazar and Chief Hood. And I used to always tell my daughters, I pray that your police chief is not sleeping also. I pray that he's concerned about active shooters like I am. So we just have to continue to practice, play well, and be prepared, most importantly.
Chief McManus, I understand you have an advisory group that kind of identifies public safety issues and concerns and priorities that emerge to develop solutions for problems like this. Tell us, does the advisory group have anything to do with that? And also, what do you actually do or to try to prepare for these types of events?
The advisory group has been together for, I don't know, several months now. And one of the things that they're doing unrelated to this issue is they're going to come up with a strategic plan, 5-year plan for the police department, along with the help of SAPD officers. But we try to brief this community group on issues such as this. Anything that's coming up new in the police department, anything that's going on around the country, any new policies that we bring up, we try to brief that community group on them. As a matter of fact, we have two community groups. One is my group, and when we talk in that group, we talk pretty high level. And then there's another group.
May I have your attention, please? A fire emergency has been reported in the building. While this may verify, please
we'll check it.
by the nearest exit. Do not use the elevators.
We'll
Do not use the elevators.
We'll go check it. We'll go check it.
May I have your
We'll go check it. We'll go check it.
Check, 1, 2. We're going to check on that, so everyone just stay seated. If there's a problem, there's plenty of exits, and we have plenty of law enforcement to direct us where we need to go. But let's just continue the conversation. I know it's a little difficult, but...
Okay, we're not going to get in trouble for not leaving because the chief told us
No,
we should stay.
we're all safe. If there's anything to it, we'll find the exit's right here, so we'll be fine.
Okay, folks, so everybody's checked it out. It looks like it's fine. Now they're just working on turning the alarm off. And while we're waiting, Chief Salazar, you know what question's coming up, and so you can be preparing and practicing it. Okay. But what I did want to tell you is we've promised you a difficult conversation. Nothing gets more difficult than trying to have one while an alarm is going off. Am I right? So promise delivered. Now would also be a good time if any of you want to get a glass of water or something. We'll call this our intermission, okay?
I understand they're going to do the questions at the end, but that's a good question. Let me find out. I just knew that they were going to do the questions at the end. They can have like a sheet or anything up there. Okay. I think they're going to start trying to get the fan off, but if you could start taking your seats, please. Yeah, I mean, because it kicked in right away.
Okay, folks, we're going to start again, and we're going to try to work through the noise of the fan until the fan shuts off, okay? And what I'm going to do is, because those microphones in front of our speakers aren't as powerful as this handheld one, I'm going to hand the power off to Chief McManus so he can continue his answer. And then if we can just go ahead and use this mic until the fan shuts off.
So as I was saying, that group, we keep them informed of things that we're doing, things that are on horizon. And as I was saying, there was two groups. The first group is that I mentioned is the group that I want to be on my team, on my committee, and we talk about high-level stuff. We talk about futuristic stuff. The second group meets with the deputy chiefs, and they talk about more detailed stuff going on in the neighborhoods. Specific crimes, specific addresses that may be problematic, chronic problems that have existed in the neighborhood forever and ever. How do we get rid of them? They work with the deputy chiefs on those down in the weed type issues.
Okay. In terms of what the department has done or is considering doing in instances of mass shooting, is there something on the horizon there?
Well, there's nothing on the horizon that we're getting ready to try or anything like that. We have, our department, SAPD, has worked with Chief Hood's department using the rescue task force concept. That was just as recent as last year. And you saw the pictures up here of fire and police coming out of the building or going into the building, whatever it was. And then several years prior to that, the entire department was trained in what we call alert training. And alert stands for Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. And that's training that takes us into these active shooter situations without having to wait for SWAT to set up. So the quicker we get into the building to try and we politely say neutralize the threat, the quicker we get into the building to do that, the less people potentially will be injured.
Great. Can you pass it to Sheriff Salazar?
Sure. One of the things that we do a lot of at the Sheriff's Office is we spend quite a bit of time training the civilian population how to respond to an active shooter event. It's a course we call CRAZE, Civilian Response to Active Shooter Events. It's about a 2-hour course that my SCORE deputies, and some of them are out in the hallway, teach to the general population based on the concept of avoid, deny, defend. And it's an interesting class. These guys are all very good instructors, and they keep it engaging and interesting in order to get the information out in a way that's simple. The best plans, all of my military folks and law enforcement people can tell you, the best plans are the most simple plans, and that's what ADD operates upon. So we spend quite a bit of time doing that. If you're interested in hosting one of those classes for us, get with our SCORE unit, and we'll come out and do it. We've run several thousand civilians through that training with the Sheriff's Office, free training. We also spend quite a bit of time training our school district police officers and school administrators in active shooter response on campuses. We partnered with a bunch of folks from the business community, Whataburger, Taco Cabana, Acadian Ambulance, donated the money to bring an organization called the We Love You Guys, I Love You Guys Foundation to town to teach this active shooter response to school districts and school administrators. Not to mention, we all train together quite a bit. These 4 agencies all train together quite a bit. But additionally, I spend quite a bit of time networking with other counties, other sheriffs. We talked about the fact that I've got a little network of sheriffs. There's 254 of us in the state of Texas. And I can tell you right now, our legislators could learn a thing or two as far as operating across party lines. They could learn a thing or two from our sheriffs.
Because we don't care whether the sheriff next door to us is red or blue. We're coming to help when the bullets start flying. And so we spend quite a bit of time working together across party lines and across the state. Let me tell you a quick story. Earlier I alluded to working together with sheriffs. So November 3rd, 2017, I called a meeting of the regional sheriffs here in this area. It'd never been done before, caught them all off guard. What we did was we went around Bexar County, and every county that touches us, we invited those sheriffs. But then we went another ring out, and every county that touches them, we invited those sheriffs. We invited sheriffs all the way up 35 to Laredo, and all the way out I-10 to Junction, and said, come meet us at Mi Tierra for lunch on November 3rd, 2017. It was a Friday. So these sheriffs all show up, and you know, small town sheriffs, a lot of them are small town sheriffs, wanted to know what we were doing here. I said, well, we're not just here to eat fajitas, although the fajitas were great. I said, we're here to exchange phone numbers. And they still didn't know what we needed to exchange phone numbers for. I said, look, I have equipment that you guys don't have. I mean, I've got armored vehicles. I've got a SWAT team. I've got drones. I've got robots. I've got all that kind of stuff. And I said, a small town sheriff may not have that. And they nodded in agreement. I said, okay, if you guys need me, I'm going to come running. And the first time you and I meet, sheriff from Wilson County, for example, doesn't need to be in the middle of an active shooter situation. We need to be meeting now at Mi Tierra restaurant. Get it? So we exchanged phone numbers. That was November 3rd. November 5th, I got up that morning and I went to church with my family. For some reason, I decided to wear my uniform to church. And as we were leaving church, my wife gets on Facebook because we're deciding where to go eat. I'm driving to go figure out where we're going to go eat lunch. She gets on Facebook and she says, babe, you got an active shooter situation somewhere called Sutherland Springs. I said, that's Wilson County. I got on the phone and I called Sheriff Tackett because 2 days earlier we had exchanged phone numbers at Mi Tierra restaurant. We got the cavalry heading that way to Sutherland Springs, and we were able to help out. Of course, my brother agencies were here. They were sending troops as well, and together we handled that situation. But it's all about networking with surrounding counties as well. So we're doing quite a bit with regard to that, not just with our partners here locally, but in other parts of the state as well.
Thank you very much. I wanted to acknowledge Councilman Courage, who's just arrived. Thank you for being here. So the takeaway I'm kind of getting from all of this is that, because there are people who are focused on sort of how do we prevent these things, and you can't really, but I was not aware that there was a program out there that citizens could get some training or figure out, because that's one of the questions I'm going to ask here in a few minutes about the specifics, the practical things that we ought to know about or we ought to be thinking about if we find ourselves in a bad situation at a Walmart or any other facility.
Sure.
You want to?
I could teach you avoid, deny, defend right now, real quick. It's that simple. We operate on the concept of ADD, avoid, deny, defend. So if there's an active shooter situation, you take it in steps. The first thing that you want to do is try to avoid the threat. Pretty simple. If the gunman's coming in that door, you run out this door. If the gunman's coming in this door, you run out that door or that door. The trick is to know where the exits are. So you want to be preparing yourselves for that. Anytime you walk into a place, know where the exits are. So let's pretend now that this shooter's coming through the door and you're not able, this door is locked, you're not able to get out. Avoidance has now failed. Deny. Find a room, find a spot, and deny entrance of that gunman to get into where you are to do you harm. So if it's a classroom, for example, get in the classroom, lock the door, get out of sight, turn the lights off, and make it look like that room's not occupied, but deny access. Okay, let's now pretend, just for argument's sake, that that door has now failed. The gunman is now coming into your room. Now you get ready to defend. Defend and fight like you're fighting against the devil himself, because that's what you're doing at that point. You're fighting against pure, unadulterated evil. So pick up a fire extinguisher, pick up a pair of scissors, and be ready to fight to kill. You're fighting for keeps at that point. Well, you say, well, what if I'm a concealed handgun license holder? Great, then you got something for that, right? Get ready to fight. And so use whatever tools are at your disposal. Certainly in an average office situation, you're not going to necessarily have CHL license holder there with you, but you do have people in numbers. Mob the attacker, jump them. 10 to 1 is a good fight. That's a good ratio at that point. Jump on the attacker, try to control the weapon, and then brain him with a fire extinguisher if you can, and that's what we encourage all people to do. That simple plan is avoid, deny, defend, and that's what we teach to thousands of Bexar County residents on a daily basis.
Thank you very much. Did any other panelists have anything they want to add to that? I know that UTSA incorporates that in their training.
Thank you. One of the things that we did was we actually created a UTSA-centric active shooter video, which uses the same terminology, avoid, deny, defend. We also go through different training. One of the things that we're looking at is we're training all of our floor captains. Every building at UTSA has a floor captain. So what we do, we train those floor captains to take a leadership role anytime we think there might be an incident such as an active shooter or any other emergency situation. So we continue that training. The other thing that we're looking at is we're looking at training our faculty, staff, and our students to be able to identify behaviors that might lead to an active shooter, something that is out of the ordinary, something that doesn't look proper. And so that's one of the other things that we're doing. We're training other people, once again, our students, faculty, and staff, to be additional eyes and ears of the police department, because it is certainly a partnership. One of the ways that we stop some of these incidents is through cooperation with our community and through our community partnerships.
That's so important that you say that, because you mentioned earlier about the impact that social media has played, where you're able to sort of stop or identify some of those things. But one of the key messages we want to get out there is, if you see something, say something, and don't be that person who waited and they remember that they heard something and they said something, but they dismissed it or discounted it. You don't want to be that person. I kind of want to touch on a couple of things before we run out of time. One of those would be folks who have concealed or open carry licenses. I kind of would like some input from you as to what should they do. Are they at risk by trying to counter an active shooter? And is it appropriate for them? And then are they at risk when officers come in and they also have a weapon? So I'm just curious as to kind of what the ideal situation would look like.
If you were to have if you were to have a CHL during an active shooter situation, by all means, when the opportunity arises, use that weapon. However, once you've done that, drop that. You don't want the police to see you waving that gun around, because then you are at risk. If you're again waving that gun around when the police walk in, once you've neutralized, again I'm being polite, once you've neutralized the shooter, put that gun down, put your hands up, and wait for the police to walk in. That's the best thing you can do.
And of course, that's part of the discussion that we probably need to have with regard to gun control and access, because there are those who would say that's exactly why we don't want to have any limitations on people's abilities to have weapons, and then others say, no, this is exactly why we shouldn't. I don't know if it's appropriate or if anybody wants to weigh in on that, but would you say statistically, we're in a better position when you have more folks who are trained and have weapons ability and the ability to counter an active shooter?
I'm going to let the elected official handle that.
I'm okay with it. As long as you know your weapon, know the limitations of your weapon and the ammunition that you're shooting. You've got to have several special considerations, and this is all I ask, is that you train in this. Okay, for example, in the law enforcement, profession, we know that this gun on my hip, and we train on this. This gun on my hip, once I go hand to hand with somebody, this gun no longer belongs to me. It belongs to whoever gets it out of my holster first. Sometimes that's the bad guy, okay? Know that and know how to counteract that. Know how to hang on to your gun if you're a CHL holder, for example. Also know that your ammunition can go clean through a shooter and through a wall and into whatever's behind that wall. So know what's behind the shooter in case you do miss. Know that in any shooting, 100% shooter is going to automatically become a 50% shooter. So some of your rounds are probably going to miss. So know what's behind the shooter. Know what's behind you. Okay, if I'm going to start shooting at this guy and I know he's going to shoot back, are there a whole bunch of little kids behind me that I'm now putting at risk by drawing fire? You know, so am I going to say that every situation is going to be perfect shoot, don't shoot scenario? No, but there are special things to consider, and you need to be prepared to make those mental decisions on your own when the time comes, because there's another thing to consider that we train our deputies in. Every bullet that leaves your gun has an attorney attached to it. So just know that there are legal ramifications to whatever actions you take, and be prepared to deal with those.
So one of the issues we're going to try to, I know our time is kind of running short. So there's an issue that some folks want to talk about. I think someone identified as potentially domestic terrorism, and sometimes there's a desire to try to figure out why these things are happening. I'd like to focus just a little bit on mental health, because I know that each and every one of you deal with the issue of mental health and how it affects your responses. And I kind of like to talk a little bit about the training that departments do with regard to trying to analyze that situation. Do you treat these things differently if there's a mental health issue involved, or we think there's one, as opposed to if this is a hate crime? Just kind of curious if there's a distinction in how the departments respond to that.
There absolutely has to be. I mean, you've got to take the totality of the circumstances into account. And if you know for a fact you're dealing with a mental health issue, absolutely that situation is going to be treated differently. Now, you can't take it any more lightly. And in some instances, you're going to take it even more seriously. So yeah, absolutely, you're going to approach that situation differently. Thankfully, I know that SAPD's got, and I'll let Chief McManus tell you all about that. But they've got a mental health unit that's out on the streets. So does the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, and that's what they're doing, is they're out constantly monitoring the population for any issues having to deal with mental health.
I imagine that goes into the observation. Obviously, hopefully, officers are trained to kind of notice and observe certain things to kind of let them know that this might be a mental health issue. But what else would the average citizen be aware? How would you even know when you show up on scene?
Let me just say that as far as mental health training goes, SAPD is trained in crisis intervention. The entire department, it's a 40-hour block of training, and it teaches officers how to deal with with not only mentally ill people, but specifically people in mental crisis on the street. But let me just say this, that if you're in a situation where an active shooter walks in the building and starts popping off rounds at people, do you really care if that person's mentally ill or if he's a hate crime? You really don't. It doesn't make any difference. That person is just as dangerous whether he's mentally ill or whether he's a terrorist. So mental illness, homegrown terrorism, it doesn't matter. You're still in danger.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Chief, but the issue is the Monday morning quarterbacks and the reporting afterwards, and I suspect, maybe I'm wrong, that's an issue that you continuously have to face, is that somehow it didn't get responded to appropriately because this person had a mental health issue. So just curious what your thoughts are about that.
So one of the things that we touched on a little earlier was our fusion center. And then we talked about a threat assessment group. So we are meeting with the school districts, and we are meeting with the different organizations to look at people that are red flagged. Because every situation that you see with a shooter, generally somebody knew something and they didn't share that information. So how do we leverage that information, whether it's one of my fire crews going on a call and they see something, or whether the school districts are monitoring something. And we also work with the hospitals, because a lot of people that we transport, they have mental illness. They don't need an ambulance. They don't need an emergency room. They need an appropriate place so they can be psychologically evaluated. And so we work with PD, with the homeless. We work on navigating people with mental illness to the correct facilities, but we are also gauging information that we are getting to where we share that. So say we pick someone up and or they've been in a hospital from emergency detention. Wouldn't it be important that we know when that person gets out? So those are the kind of things that we are trying to So those are the kind of citizens that we need to monitor, to where we have put them on emergency detention. They've been detained 20 times, and this guy's getting out today. So wouldn't we want to know that and share that information? So any incident that you see, everyone's always saying, we knew something. So we are trying to prevent incidents by sharing information, by leveraging that with all of the different partners in this region, and hopefully that will prevent something in the future.
Bruce.
If I could, at the university, we actually have a behavioral intervention team. And the way that works is if we have someone who's referred to our behavioral intervention team, we take the appropriate steps to, number one, make sure they're not a danger to themselves. Number two, make sure they're not a danger to the university community. And then we try to get them the resources that they need to deal with their mental health issue. So I think that's crucial in some of the things that we do on our campus, because we're starting to see more and more mental health issues. And so that behavioral intervention team also has morphed into a threat assessment team. So anyone that we think is a threat, we might call the FBI, we might call Chief McManus, Sheriff Salazar, and say, can you help us work with this, and ask them for resources to assist us in dealing with that particular situation. And I can give you one. We saw an active threat on social media, and we weren't sure if it was a credible threat or not, but I was able to reach out for Special Agent in Charge Combs and say, can you check this out for us? And actually, in that particular case, we found out it was not a credible threat, but without the sharing of those resources and without those law enforcement partners, that wouldn't have been possible.
Thank you. I have sort of one question. I know, Chief, you have a hard stop, so I'm going to ask you to answer this question first, and if you have to depart. But so for the average person out here who wants to contribute and be a part of that information stream, who exactly do they call? What do they say? And what number is it? 311, 911? Who do we call?
If anyone were to have any information about someone they suspected might be at risk of pulling off one of these events, you would call the police department. We would, I promise you, we would get back to you pretty quick. In the aftermath, and you read this in the paper, in the aftermath of many of these active shooter events, you always hear someone who knew that person saying, something wasn't right. He just seemed strange. They just weren't themselves. They were angry. They're putting stuff up on Facebook that's, kind of threatening. But I really didn't think anything of it. I just thought he was joking, or I just thought he was having a bad day. That's the kind of stuff that we want to know about. And we'd rather know about it and have it not pan out than it not be reported and something bad happens.
Anybody else want to comment?
If I could, we actually just implemented a new app called LiveSafe on our campus. And LiveSafe gives our students, with the use of their smartphone, the ability to send us pictures, videos, or text messages. And that information goes directly into the police department. It is something that we implemented about a year ago. We have about 5,000 subscribers now. It is fantastic, and most importantly, if you deal with young people, they live in this no-snitch world right now where they don't want to be a snitch. Most importantly, you can actually share this information anonymously, and that is huge for our young people now, to be able to share that information and share it anonymously.
So here's a question. We are talking about the citizens of San Antonio, what it is we can do and what it is you guys are doing to help us stay safe. What about the officers? I imagine that this is a traumatic type of event, and I don't know, we've been very lucky here that we've not had it in the city of San Antonio thus far, but I know that we've had officers and folks who've dispersed out to other areas. Can you talk a little bit about and share the impact that it has on your teams?
Sure. Yeah, that's something you always have to take into account is in the aftermath. Okay, the shooting has stopped, the crime scene's been processed, now what? Well, now you got a bunch of first responders who are ending up with 1,000 memories that they just as soon not have. And you got to deal with that in the aftermath to make sure that you're not going to run into other problems further down the road. So, you rely upon your mental health professionals, for example, within your own agency. I was blessed that earlier this year I was able to hire the first ever departmental psychologist in the sheriff's office. We've never had one. An agency this size in a metropolitan area this size, we've never had one. Whereas I grew up at the San Antonio Police Department where we always had 3 at any given time. And so you could see where it was a concern of mine. So we brought her on, Dr. Brandy Burke. She actually came from the SAPD, and now she runs that division for me. And she does a great job of monitoring deputies that have gone through critical incidents and making sure that they're okay with it in the aftermath. But additionally, she's building a team of deputies that are specially trained, again, patterned upon what already exists at the SAPD, a peer support group of deputies that some of them have been there and have come through it, well, and now they want to help their brother deputies get through these critical incidents and just relate to them in the aftermath and go, look, I've been there. Here's what you're going to see. You're going to have nightmares. You're going to be irritable. You and your wife may be fighting more, but that's okay. That's part of the process. Don't panic about it, but let's just know that it's part of human emotion, and let's learn how to deal with it. And I'm here as your peer support deputy to help you through that process.
Thank you. If any, yes.
I'd just like to add that resiliency is critical for all first responders, and we mirror with the psychologists and friends helping friends and all of those things for our members, critical incident stress debriefing, that we will take companies out. Maybe today we see some horrific things and we want to take care of them because they're such a valuable resource. But the thing that we are learning from these events is that our citizens are becoming the first responders. There were people in that Walmart, there were people in Dayton that held pressure on wounds, that cradled someone that was dying, that removed a victim. They need help too. And so those are the things that I've talked to the mayor about in depth, with the city manager, with Chief McManus, is how do we provide resiliency for a community? And so those are things that we really have to be concerned about, and we are going to need partners in the community. We're going to need help out there because our citizens are going to be the first responders, and they're going to be affected in far worse ways than us sometimes. We have the resources, so that is something for all of us to kind of think about as we move forward.
That's a very good point. We have, I know that there are some of you who have some questions or some points you'd like to make, and I think Councilman Pelaez is going to bring something.
Microphone real quick. So the first thing I'd like to do is all of us join together in thanking our panelists. Show of hands for how many of you was this a valuable conversation? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you guys for being here. Chief, I know that you've got a hard stop and you got to take off. I would like for you to just to tell us a little bit about what happened in Dayton and what you and I were just talking about at the beginning of the show here.
So in Dayton, Ohio, the Oregon district, which is where the shooting occurred, that is like Dayton's version of Southtown. And it's packed on weekend nights and on holidays and like Halloween. And because the crowds are so big there, we put extra officers to cover those crowds and to work the neighborhoods. And it's actually part of my budget request this year that we staff 5 entertainment zones here in the city with additional officers so that we can provide a consistent coverage when those crowds come in on the weekends. Because if something were to happen and we're not staffed up, that's our fault. So we're going to hopefully that part of the budget will be approved, and we'll have those additional resources in these entertainment zones. And the entertainment zones I'm talking about are North St. Mary's, the Main Street Strip, the Pearl, Southtown, and Military Drive. Those are the 5 entertainment zones that during peak hours of activity there will be providing consistent coverage so that we can address those problems that the neighborhoods are experiencing and provide crowd control, again, during those peak hours.
And so going back to Dayton, when you were the police chief there, you instituted this policy in Dayton of having extra police officers in this particular entertainment zone.
Well, I guess I would say I affirmed the policy.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Oregon district, I mean, that area is just packed. It's one of the primary restaurant, bar, entertainment zones in the city.
But the point is because there was this policy in place, that means that there was extra officer coverage, and that's why that tragedy wasn't a bigger tragedy than...
Yeah, because the officers were there and they responded so quickly, they presumed or assumed that saved a lot of lives because that threat was neutralized pretty quick.
Folks, now we've come to the part where all of you take out your weapons of mass destruction in your pockets, these phones. And I'm not kidding. These are weapons of mass destructions. Bad information online, on Facebook, on Twitter, has led to confusion for communities. In fact, if you remember, for a while, there was a lot of folks convinced that there were 2 shooters in El Paso. Because of really bad information on those phones. And so, again, I would urge you all, and any of you disagree with me when I say, if you read something on Facebook, take it with a grain of salt. It might not be true, right, Sheriff? Yeah. Okay, so now is the time to take this out. If you guys got to go to menti.com and type in that code. Chief McManus, if you got to take off, take off. Okay, and what's going to happen is we're going to ask some questions of you, right? And you're going to be able to give us feedback and give feedback to these participants up here on our panel. And we're going to make this the interactive part. And then throughout, you guys may have a question, and I'll come out there and we'll talk on the mic, okay? So is everybody ready with this code and going to this website? And if you are, we'll start now. So, this is actually a really good tool that we've been using lately. The way this works is it asks you questions and you answer them on your phone. So right now it says down there that 42, 43, 44 of you are connected. And it's asking you a pretty simple question. Where are you located right now? And so that it's not too hard, I gave you a hint. The hint is books. And your choice is the Alamo, the Central Library, City Hall, and Hardberger Park Urban Ecology Center. Now, there's somebody in this room who believes they're in the Alamo. This is not the Alamo, folks. There's somebody here who thinks they're in City Hall. This is not City Hall. That's not the correct answer. The correct answer is we are in the Central Library. There are now 52 of you who have responded. 54, that's a good number. So we'll go to the next question. That means you all are signed in. The next one, what are the strongest emotions you felt or you feel when discussing the possibility of an active shooter scenario? Think of an active shooter scenario. What is it you feel right now just having to have this conversation? Okay? Now, while you're doing that, and while you're entering this information in there, I want to point out that the active shooter scenario, this mass shooting scenario, is something we've been talking a lot about at City Hall. The chief has come and talked to us about it. We've spent a lot of time talking to Chief Hood about, what are his preparedness plans. It just happens to be budget season right now, and do we have enough budgeted away to be able to provide you all with the necessary tools? Chief McManus, some of the necessary tools you need in order to maintain a robust SWAT team, let's say. Do you have what you need right now? And I said earlier when I showed people those robots and all that, walk us through what kind of tools those are, if that's now commonplace, or is that something really exotic?
Is this a trick question?
No, sir. Keep going.
Okay.
John, Councilman Courage is here writing down everything you say.
So you've often heard the criticism that of over-militarizing the police. This picture that you saw behind us is, I guess, what you would call an example of what people think is over-militarizing the police. But these weapons and tools that are considered militarization are used only in situations like this. So they're not used on patrol, they're not used for community meetings, they're used in life and death situations where there are hostages being held, where there have been people killed and someone's still shooting. So these tools are necessary for police. I don't care what department it is. You know, the proper caliber weapons, the proper armored vehicles, all those different things, explosives, you name it. If it can help us eliminate a threat to other people, then I don't consider that over militarizing the police, and I think that we need those tools.
Thanks, Chief. Sheriff, you got some of these tools too.
We do. We've got some of these tools. I mean, not to the extent that my buddy over here has. I mean, if you've ever seen that scene in Batman when Joker looks at him and goes, "Where does he get all those wonderful toys?" That's what I look at the SAPD like. So, but we make do. So here for the first time ever, again, we're building our first full-time SWAT team at the Sheriff's Office. Never had one. We have a SWAT team, but right now they come from within the ranks of our patrol deputies. Now, why is that problematic? Because when there's a SWAT call out, now half my patrol force goes and dresses up as in their SWAT uniforms, and they're handling that SWAT situation. But what does that do? That leaves parts of my county uncovered. So we're building our first ever, thankfully we got the money through Commissioner's Court last year, and we're now building that full-time SWAT team that when I have an active situation, a SWAT situation, it doesn't deplete my patrol resources. But additionally, we're giving ourselves tools that we just absolutely need. Again, an agency this size. When I came over to the Sheriff's Office, I'm at a hostage incident, and they're asking me, "Hey, Sheriff, what's our next step?" I said, "Send in the robot. That's just what you do." Remember, I grew up at the SAPD. We got robots. They looked at me like I was crazy. They looked at me like I had a third eye in the middle of my forehead. Said, "Sheriff, this ain't SAPD. We don't have robots here." And so we got through that scenario. The following week, we used asset seizure funds and bought ourselves an $80,000 SWAT robot that we now use to save lives. Same thing with drones. We've never had drone technology at the Sheriff's Office. We saw a need there. We were able to use asset seizure funds to get it done. And now we've got a pretty vibrant drone operation going on at the Sheriff's Office as well. So what I'm getting at is we find ways to make it happen, whether it's a budgeted item or not. We also just recently started up the Bexar County Sheriff's Foundation. That is a nonprofit organization run by the San Antonio Area Foundation that private donors, private citizens, businesses can donate to this, and we can then use that to buy equipment for the Sheriff's Office that isn't a budgeted item. We make it happen over there.
Chiefs, Sheriff, this is how your customers feel. When we ask them, what are your strong emotions when thinking about active shooter scenarios, they entered the word fear more often than any other word. Anger, concern, anxiety, sadness. But the other smaller ones are really interesting, right? Anxiety, panic, I'm pissed off. Who do I trust? Dread, we're on the front line. Confusion. This is very raw, right? I'll tell you, when we first did this first town hall, we asked the exact same question. That is identical to what the first crowd told us. And I think that most of us agree that when we're seeing this play out in the comment sections of articles and on Facebook and on Twitter, these are the feelings that all of us have. So let's move on to the next question, because what we want to know now is, have you ever participated in an active shooter drill or some kind of information session where they teach you what to do, right? What Chief Salazar was teaching us. So while we're doing that, Chief Lewis, how do the parents of UTSA feel knowing that their kids are having to do these drills for active shooters?
Unfortunately, I think they realize that it is something that's necessary in order to be prepared. And so one of the things that I try to do is I try to ensure them that we are going to do everything within our power to keep their most valuable commodity safe. But they understand that we have to do that as far as preparedness.
You know, for those of you that have some white hair on your head, or no hair on your head like you, sir, do y'all remember that there was a time where I was a baby, I think I was in 2nd grade when I had to do it, and I vividly remember it, where we'd had to hide under our desks at a part of a drill in the event of a nuclear bomb. Do you remember that? Right? Do y'all remember that? Yeah. Well, they don't do that anymore at schools. My kids were telling me that now what they do is they hide under their desk in anticipation of something like this, which is more likely than a nuclear bomb hitting you. 34 of you, 2/3 of you, have participated in a drill like this one. The other 16 of you have not. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Go back to the previous slide. Folks, that one. What you just saw play out here with this nice lady's question and her comments, tell me if that didn't cover the entire spectrum of emotions that you see up there on that cloud. Ma'am, I think it's interesting to point out right now that we have students demand action here right now. These are kids who are very conscientious about this issue and who are worried for their own classmates because they know that they're targets, right? Chief, you hear this often, I think, right? Which is, I feel like the police officers see us as, you know, they approach us and their first assumption is we're bad guys, right? Can you talk a little bit about your community policing initiatives?
We have a program right now that I'm not sure if any of you have heard of it or not, but it's very prevalent in the schools. We have a program called Success Through Respect, Success Through Respect. We have a program called Handle with Care, and a number of other types of presentations that we give on a regular basis in schools throughout the city. So it's not just you know, we look at certain people and we see one thing and nothing else. I think oftentimes we paint with a broad brush. I think I understand the sentiment, I understand the emotion, but please don't paint us with that broad brush because not everyone is like that.
Yeah, it's, thanks, Chief, thanks for that. We asked you all right now, how many of you own firearms? How many of you in this room own firearms? It's funny, the first time we did this question at our last town hall, the majority of the people in the room own firearms. Right, students? If you all remember, the majority of the folks own firearms. In this instance, that's the opposite. Different crowd, perhaps, right? But we went around the room and asked just a few people, why do you own a firearm? And what we heard was, well, I like to go hunting, right? My father gave me a firearm, and yeah, I consider it an heirloom, and it's been passed down to me. I once bought a firearm, and I just don't know what to do with it, so I've kept it. Other folks said for self-defense, right? There was two gentlemen who stood up and said, because I can, and the Second Amendment says I can, right? And there were some other folks who kind of objected to even being asked. Those were interesting answers. For me, the most interesting answers are, why do you not own a gun? So, who here does not own a gun? Let me see some hands. Ma'am, why do you not own a gun, ma'am? You never thought of it. Okay. Interesting. Why do you not own a gun? You don't like them. Okay. Ma'am, why do you not own a gun? Interesting. Interesting. Yes, ma'am, in the green? Yeah, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Now, for those of you that do own a gun, and I went through the answers that we heard the last time, who here has a different answer than what I went through? Yeah? You don't own a gun? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You own a gun. All right. Why do you own a gun? Okay. Start with your quote. Okay. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So did I. Yeah. Yeah. So this is an interesting answer. He owns a gun to deter, right, people from doing bad things to you or your neighbors and your community. Okay. You are your brother's keeper. Good. All right. Yes, sir. Okay. All right. I hear you. I hear you. Yes, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. So I'll tell you, I was just in Canada a few weeks ago, and this nice lady said, you know, in Canada, they track, they use them for hunting, and then they track their prey, and they only shoot one time. And I found out another interesting statistic, and that is that one of the top reasons Canadians die is by moose attack. So I'm not sure that they're doing it the right way. So listen, we got to keep moving, but this is the conversation. Next one, Noah. All right. Here's the question for you. I believe that law enforcement has the tools to prevent mass shootings. Answer that one. Chief Hood, what do you think? Do you and do first responders have the tools to prevent it? I know you got the tools to respond. As soon as he's done answering. Yes, ma'am.
You know, that's an interesting question from a fire department perspective, and so do we have the tools to prevent? We have the tools to communicate and work with other agencies. What we have done, we're one of 7 fire departments in the country that have embedded a firefighter with the FBI. So we have one of our arson investigators who is in the FBI working cases just like their agents. He's part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So we are trying to, again, leverage that information with other agencies. We do everything humanly possible that we can to prevent through the programs that I talked about, but again, it's a challenge. We're doing everything humanly possible that we know how to do at this time.
So, you know, we heard Chief Lewis say that they've instituted a new program at the university by way of an app. You have 5,000 folks who have a tool where they can actually talk to y'all and say, hey, I'm worried about my roommate, right? Or, shoot, I'm worried about myself, right? Sheriff, do we have anything like that in Bexar County other than just 911? Sure, well, he's got a tool, right, at his campus. He's got 5,000 students signed up to be able to talk directly to law enforcement and their mental health teams and to sort of help each other, keep an eye on each other, see something, say something. Aside from 911, does the county have something else?
Yeah, I mean, we've got text to 911. We've got technology, different technologies for different things. I mean, we've got up here between us, among us four, we've got the capabilities and the equipment and the training and certainly the desire to stop a lot of active shooter situations, but we don't have the tools to stop them all. You all have the ability to stop a lot of them as well, just by see something, say something. So the trick is to have every tool available to you and use it. Know when it's appropriate to use each tool in any given situation.
So then turn around and look at that screen, Sheriff, because 33 people in this room think that you do not have the tools to prevent mass shootings. But what you just told us is we're not thinking of tools in the right way. All of us are on the front line of see something, say something.
I'm the first one to acknowledge that we don't have the tools to stop each and every mass shooting. If that were the case, we would never have one in this country. Yeah. But you'd be surprised how many are prevented on a daily basis before they even started.
All right, let's go to the next screen. And the lady in the red in the back has a question, and I'm going to ask you. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Not for everybody.
Yeah, Chief
Not
Lewis,
for everybody.
What do you think? You want all your students with CHLs?
No, not at all.
Why not?
I would hope that we would give our officers the opportunity and the professionals the ability to handle it. Can that assist in some manner? Yes. But also, a lot of it depends on your training, your capabilities, and can you handle that threat sufficiently?
You'd feel safer. Okay, great. Ma'am?
So on this Tuesday, there was an incident at the San Antonio Zoo where an employee was saying that he wanted to hurt his manager and also some children. Fortunately, the San Antonio Zoo trains their employees, see something, hear something, say something. So the fellow employee did just that. They did just that. Now, you talked about having the tools. The appropriate tool was see something, hear something, say something, because we are the front lines. He did. He reported it. And immediately, because the San Antonio Zoo knows that employee, they took all of those threats seriously. Had that anxious employee had a gun, he very well may have hurt someone. And so we're very thankful that he didn't have the opportunity to hurt someone. Now, when SAPD was called in, of course, there was not a gun involved. He didn't get arrested. I like what you said, that they track or they start tracking. I'm hoping that this young person gets tracked, because the person who reported was my son with high-functioning autism. And now there's no security at the zoo because they're all around him because it was a credible threat. So we do know that see something, hear something, it was effective.
So that's important, and I guess it dovetails perfectly onto this question that you all have answered. There's still about 5 of you out there that haven't answered, but active shooter drills are effective in preparing for an active shooter scenario. 3.6 score, right? None of you many of you don't strongly agree that drills are effective. San Antonio law enforcement and public safety agencies are well prepared to address an active shooter scenario. 3.9 score out of 5. As a community, we can do more to prepare for active shooter scenarios. 4.5. All of you strongly agree that together we can do something about this. So you, sir, in the green, had a question. By the way, there's your next question. The next question, and this one's a hard one for you all. I want first responders to, and I want you to finish the sentence, okay? But in the meantime, sir, go ahead. Okay. So we're already getting answers. Chiefs, sheriff, I want first responders to be quick, smart, and compassionate. I want making training available for the general public. Be safe and know that you are appreciated. They want you all to act with humanity because we're all humans first. Kill the blank. Okay. They want you to continue to educate the public and their officers so everyone is informed and we become more unified. They want you to teach kids about gun safety. They want you to be properly trained and get all the training that you can get. And they want you guys to share tools on how all of us can be safer. They want you to not victim blame. They want you to be prepared with mental illness processes. They want you to maintain a healthy relationship with the youth of San Antonio, educate people on having conversations, and engage in the community. And they want you to keep an open mind. My commitment to all of you is that we're going to be printing these pages out and handing them to the chiefs and the sheriff so that you guys can go home and look at these. But Chief McManus, do you have a reaction to these answers?
There is not one of those answers that I would take exception with.
Be fearless. Talk to senators and lawmakers about preventing mass shootings rather than just preparing. We need to change our laws if we wish to prevent future shootings. Councilman Courage, you're seeing these answers. Are any popping out to you as a surprise? I mean, you and I have spent some time talking about this. What do you think City Council should do with these kinds of answers?
I think you said exactly the right thing. We should make sure that all our first responders are aware of how the community feels about their responsibility to us as first responders in cases of mass shootings or any kind of threat on human life. And I think they know a lot of these things, but I think it's important for them to be able to see that again from our perspective here today and what you may have received in your other time, and the next one you do too.
Folks, I'm going to answer just a couple more questions, and we can direct them at the panel or at me, and then we're going to have to wrap it up. So the gentleman in the Superman shirt. You are Superman. Mental health issue, gentlemen. Mental health issue. Don't interrupt Superman.
Prescribe these drugs that are found commonly. I don't think it's the law enforcement's job to do this. Somewhere else in government, maybe. But what is done to give them a male role model to make sure that they don't fall in that category that becomes susceptible, forgive my speech, to this kind of behavior? Is that there? And I don't mean a red flag, but I mean, the person obviously has mental health issues. He's prescribed something. Is there something in place to say, do you have a mentor? Do you have someone to guide you? Or are you going to go home and just abuse these drugs and get it worse off? So I think, the conversation has shifted towards guns when, nothing really, no studies say guns are the issue. There are three things that are the issue. The prescription drugs, lack of a father figure, and gun-free zones. And how can we improve the situation and provide either first responders or medical providers the type of tools that they need for this situation?
Chief McManus, you just heard, and we hear this quite frequently, guns aren't the issue, right? The issue is fill the blank, right? You sit with a perspective that none of us have, right? As the chief of police of the 7th largest city in the United States. What goes through your mind when you hear guns aren't the issue, the issue is whatever other issue is being asserted at that time?
That kind of gets us into a political discussion about whether we should control guns, take guns away, make certain guns illegal. And I don't wade into those waters.
Okay.
My pool, the pool that I wade in, is enforcement, deterrence. So I don't really have a good answer for the gentleman's comments.
Yeah, which is why, and thank you, Chief, I was hoping you'd say that exactly, which is why this is a second of 3 town halls. Town hall number 1 was a discussion about why it happens. We had mental health experts there. We had experts from faith leadership. We had experts in political rhetoric and the relationship to violence. Really robust conversation. Today's was mass shootings, this kind of violence from the perspective of first responders, right? The third one, which is where I want you to come, Superman. I want you to be there. And that's the policy discussion, where we're going to have John Courage, the mayor. We're going to have senators, commissioners. We're going to have the policy folks sitting here listening to you so that you can ask the question, what are you doing about that? Or what are you doing about this? Because that's a conversation that needs to happen. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's a good point. So here's what I'd like to do, and you know what? I'm gonna take your question after I do this. How many of you, and we did this at the last town hall, and I think this is something that frustrates us a lot, first responders and your elected representatives. Raise your hand and keep your hand up if you know your next door neighbor's name. I know you don't like it, but let's do it. Okay? Keep your hand up if you know your next door neighbor's name. Keep your hand up, or put your hand down. I'm sorry. So, do you know what your neighbor does for a living? Okay. Do you know where your neighbor works? Do you know your neighbor's children's names? Okay. Do you know where your neighbor's children go to school? Do you know where your neighbor goes to church? Interesting, right? Go ahead and put your hands down. For those of you that have white hair, okay, or no hair like you, sir, do you remember a time, I love picking on him. Rudy, thank you for being a good sport. Do Do you remember a time where everybody would have kept their hand up? Do you remember that? Chief Hood, do you remember a time where it was impossible to not know all those questions because your mom was up in everybody's business and the mom next door knew everything about the neighbor and there was a good chain of gossip and everybody knew everybody, right? And everybody watched out for everybody. You remember that? Chief, you know my mom used to say, go, leave, get out of my house. Don't come back until 6 o'clock when dinner's ready, right? Because they felt our neighbors were safe. How many of you would do that today with a child? Some of these folks in this room disagree with me when I say the following. That I think that one of the problems that we're experiencing in America 2019 is a loss of community. And that we are more likely than not to yell at each other online than make the effort of going and figuring out where my neighbor goes to church, asking them, how was your week? Are you doing okay? You don't look so well, right? Can I help you rake your leaves up or whatever? How many of you disagree that the loss of community is a serious problem? You disagree. You don't think the loss of community. You agree. Okay. All right. You don't think so. Stand up. I want to hear. Why is the loss of community not a problem? Okay. Okay. Thanks, Chief. Okay. The gentleman in the hat with the glorious beard, you had a question. Go ahead, sir. Okay. Yeah, good point. Thank you. Both of those are excellent points. Thank you. And I think the answer to that, sir, is we're headed in, if that's true, we're headed in the right direction. There's still 6% gap that we could close, and anything we can do right towards continuing to head in the wrong direction is a good thing. And I'm hoping that you'll agree with me that there's still work to be done. Good. Got it. Guys, this is the kind of debate that we're going to have at Town Hall number 3. So what I'd like to do is ask you all to fill out this survey. It helps us put together the next Town Hall. We have come to an end because we are also guests in this library, and we've only promised them that we were going to be up until 8. So will you please join me in thanking our panelists one more time and our moderator. Feel free to stick around, talk to your first responders, get to meet them, thank them for the hard work that they do. For those of you that didn't get we didn't get to your question, show up to the third one, and we'll talk to you. Thank you so much.